I've heard it's bad at gaming, but what does that mean? Finally getting back up to speed, Surface Pro 9 SQ3, and one of the things I kind of wanted to highlight some of my experiences just trying to game on this really sleek portable Windows tablet. It's basically a beefier version of the chip we'd find in phones and tablets. But running Windows is the tricky part because we expect a certain level of performance once we see a more desktop style UI. So with some of the criticisms that this isn't really a particularly good solution for gaming, I kind of want to set a threshold. But what does that mean? Instead of saying it can't play the bestest games at the highest graphics, why don't we try to show what the limits might be? I went through a whole bunch of the types of games that I really like to play. I really like arcadey twin stick shooters and platformers. I've been playing Tetris since I was old enough to boot DOS way back in the day. And then I also tried a couple of games that were a little more graphically demanding, and of course they didn't perform super great, but we can at least take a look at how they failed. Instead of just saying bad at gaming, some pros and cons. And then someone could see, oh, maybe the games I like to play live well within the limits of this hardware. So I just want to start with one, the game that I've been playing basically my entire life. This is currently my favorite flavor of Tetris, and we can see how it goes. One of the things we'll definitely showcase here is as we're loading proper PC games, none of these are really rated for Windows on ARM. None of the software is really built for Windows on ARM. So it's kind of funny seeing like having to pull from Steam a PC style game. These are mostly games that also play well on the Steam Deck, and then running that on an ARM SoC. So now we can say, okay, actually I've got my controller here. I don't think we want to play Tetris in this tiny little window. So let's go into graphics and let's say full screen. And you're going to notice something right away. I've already in a lot of these games reduced the resolution. So this is a pretty high resolution panel that's on the Surface Pro 9. It's a thing that I have a problem with a lot of gaming laptops. Similarly, they'll put these incredible 3K, 4K displays on like a mid-ranger GPU. You often have to go into your game settings and tune that down. If you've got like a 3060, you're not really doing hardcore 60 frame per second 4K gaming, so you turn it down. I think one of the biggest challenges of the Surface Pro 9, all of these games that I installed immediately defaulted to the full resolution of the tablet. But if I turn it down to something that's a little bit more reasonable, 720p gaming at the distance that I would sit from this tablet, it's a little further away than I'd be holding my Steam Deck. Well, let's see what that looks like. All right, we're full screen. I want to keep that. Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go into our journey mode. I'm going to refrain from singing Journey. Oh, no, let's just stick with normal so that I can kind of get... This is not a very comfortable setup. This is not usually how I game with the tablet flat. So you're going to have to pardon this top-down flat shot. So I'm seeing what, like 120 frames per second, 115, seems to be doing okay. And Tetris Effect is not a beefy game by any stretch, but it's not exactly a super light game either. So I'm already kind of in trouble here. So let me, that's not where I want to put it. Let's see if I can get that in there, but then I want to drop a Tetris. So just a couple little frame stutters and jutters whenever we've got the particle effects going hardcore. But I gotta say, this is really playable. The main bulk of the game doesn't seem to be giving me any troubles. It's you just got to be a little careful when you're clearing out a lot of lines, because that seems to be where the graphics start to chug a little bit. So if you're dropping a Tetris and then you've got something else that you're going to play, then that's where you might get yourself into trouble. So you're trying to plan... I'm paying more attention to the game. If you're trying to plan your next drop and there's just a touch of that frame jank, then that's where you're probably going to get messed up. But I think this is perfectly reasonable. Like, even with the music and the pulsing and the lighting effects, everything in the background's going, I'm still getting between 90 and 100 frames per second. 720p gaming, I think we're pretty solid here on Tetris Effect. All right, next up, one of the hands down best games of 2022. Daughter and Daddy rolled credits on Shredder's Revenge. She was so proud of herself. We beat the whole game? Okay, so look at what we got. Display borderless full screen, and it defaults to 2880 by 1620. There's no way this ARM SoC is really driving a sustainable frame rate at 2880. So let's switch it to windowed. Let's take this down to, oh, it's going to keep that. So let's try 1440 by 810. I don't want to go down to 960 by 540. Borderless full screen, 1440 by 810. All right, we're going to see if this helps us out. It definitely letterboxes us a bit, but now my Steam counter at the top is pinned at 120 frames per second, at least on the loading screen here. As long as we can keep this floating 50 to 60 frames per second, we're going to have a solid arcadey experience here. So I'm gonna select a hero. Let's see. You know what? I'm just gonna stick. I've already maxed out Raphael, so let's go with that. I want to go back to a level that I can play almost by memory because I'm at an awkward angle here. It's a funny angle. Okay, still at 120 frames per second. It dipped to 119, back up to 120. Down to 100, up to 120. I'm sure this is absolutely impacting. So I'm assuming we're going to drop into the 90s after I start really getting some of these guys beat up here. Ah! Again, I've got lights from my office going on, so I'm seeing all the glare even though it's not on camera, and I totally... I'm able to clear this without getting totally killed. Yeah, this is eminently playable. I think the thing that is a little bit of a challenge is I wish there were a slightly more adaptive, like FreeSync style, because you can kind of see, it's going to be hard to see in this video, but in real life, when it hits these dips, occasionally, especially with some of those lighting and particle effects, you can see that slight judder when it drops from 120 to something lower. On the whole, again, taking this down to 720p, we're sustaining an extremely high frame rate. I could probably step up the resolution, but honestly, on something that's really arcadey like this, I don't know that the resolution is going to matter that much. If anything, you'd want the more fluid frame rate. So yeah, Shredder's Revenge, I mean, I'm saying this like I haven't already tried playing this game a whole bunch. This is off of the Steam version. Our main game save is off of the Xbox version. We started playing it on our downstairs home PC, which is connected to my Game Pass account. So this is my Steam copy. You should make fun of me because I have 2 copies of Shredder's Revenge. So I'm just kind of burning extra video here because I could just keep playing this game. Lex and I have done a couple levels on this tablet, which is handy. We both just plug in some controllers and we can both jump on and play the game together. And this is a really handy and portable way to do that. So I think we've got a pretty good look at Shredder's Revenge. I think we can back out of here and maybe check out a couple other little indie titles. Vampire Survivors is probably the game I've logged the most time on in 2022. I'm hitting almost 120 hours on this game. It is not a graphically demanding or challenging game to run. This is a little $5 indie game. It's definitely sort of a sweetheart pick for Game of the Year. But if we come up into options, there's not really a lot to play with. So the resolution isn't particularly high, but all we get here is this performance mode toggle. So I'm going to check performance mode. And this one can actually be really challenging, not because the graphics are particularly intense, but because so many things are on the screen all at the same time. When you get to the end of the run on a Steam Deck, you're basically watching a slideshow. And if I could, I mean, I don't know that it would really help with the way that the graphics on this play. I actually kind of wish I could take the graphic settings down even a little bit more, because there's not a lot in the game that really requires better resolution. But I think we're already kind of at the limit of how small can you make the game and how little detail you can use to accomplish what you want. Oh, I don't need any of that stuff. Playing right now, it's pretty smooth. I mean, this looks really good. I'm gonna sort of pause my commentary here, get a little bit further in, and then with more enemies on the screen, let's see if this chugs worse.
20 minutes later.
All right, we're just about 20 minutes into the game. My Sigma is totally maxed out. I think I can get one more weapon from chests, but for the next 10 minutes, this is just going to be on autopilot. And I haven't seen any appreciable slowdown. The only time things get a little a little twitchy. Whenever Sigma's sort of galaxy effect, you can see how the background changes and it turns into the swirling vortex sort of weapon. That can have that can cause a bit of a problem with the frame rate. But this right here, where we're seeing the swarms of enemies coming from all sides, at this point, my Steam Deck would already be kind of a slideshow. This is performing better than my Steam Deck in a pretty challenging application for this type of gaming. It's really low poly, it's really low res, but tons and tons and tons of things are happening on your screen. Lots of enemies, particles, your weapons are flying all around. You've got your hit points, damage points. Everything is having to be everything is being rendered all at the same time, and this is doing a better job than my dedicated portable gaming solution. And I can kind of keep just going with a number of my favorite smaller indie and arcadey games. They're playing really well. This is Defense Grid. Defense Grid is one of my all-time favorite tower defense games. These really smooth zooms to get around your map to zoom in on towers and your base where the aliens are going to steal all of your power cores. And even with enemies on screen, I'm not going to play out a whole map here. I've been playing this game quite a bit. It's been running really well. And that's generally been true with all of these games here on the right side of my screen. Defense Grid, we just showed that one. Neurovoider is a really fun indie arcadey twin stick shooter. Crying Suns came from, I think, Humble Games. The Humble Bundle folks made this really great sort of tactical roguelite. Cuphead plays really fluidly, and that's a game that you need that higher frame rate for that precision platforming. Ape Out, Mega Man Collection, Sonic Mania, Tetris Effect, one of my all-time favorite ports from the Nintendo, Blaster Master Zero, Children of Morta, and Anomaly. All of these games are in that kind of middle tier. We're talking indie, we're talking pixel art, but I did want to show if we tweak some of the settings, we can get Portal 2 going. So again, this is an older title, and you can see the screen just reset to a lower resolution to get Portal up and running. I think this is just on the verge of being decently playable, and it's a lot more graphics intense, especially for how the portal effects flip in, pop in to the environments that you're playing through. Playing here right at the very beginning of the game, and I've got a pretty fluid look around. I just want to get to a point where we'll get the portals going. So there's one portal up. We need to come into this room, so I'm going to push this button, and it's going to throw open that portal. And actually, it's behaving really well now. The last time I tried playing this game, when you were moving around the portal and you could kind of see through the portal and see yourself, I was seeing a lot of jank. Right now, it's actually kind of messing up my video that it's running as smooth and as well as it is. We're going to take that as a victory because now I need to move that over to big red button. Let's get that. I like the little controller and rumble effects. That's all working great. Gonna move through this little portal space here. Drop it. Oh no, drop it. Come on, companion cube. Excellent. And then I need to go to this button. You can see that portal open. Actually, this is playing way better than when I was trying to demo it last night. So let's call this victory. If you'll pardon the terrible joke as I wrap up this one little level here, this was a triumph. I just kind of walked through some of the intro here. This is actually fairly capable at doing sort of 2-generation old console gaming. This is Batman Arkham Asylum Game of the Year Edition. And again, you've got to turn down the graphic settings. You've got to turn down the resolution, and I've set the quality to medium, but I'm staying above 30 frames per second. And this was a game that when it originally came out on consoles, it could struggle to stay at 30 frames per second on older hardware, or I mean, for the hardware of its time. I mean, that just looks pretty good with all of those lighting effects and stuff. And it doesn't matter how much I fling the camera around. Right here, I'm actually staying above 60 in this smaller space. But again, this dips down more when you're in a wider environment. That's where the tablet's going to start to struggle with more graphics intense games, is when that draw distance increases. So once we get out of this little space here, I bet you will see this drop back down to like 50 frames per second, probably dips into the mid 40s. But dips into the mid 40s on Arkham Asylum is totally playable. I'm gonna get out of this and let me show you some of the games that have actually struggled trying to keep up with this tablet hardware. All right, we're trying to fire up Control, and we're not expecting this to play super great, right? Like, I've taken the resolution all the way down to standard definition. This is like 480p gameplay. And even here in just this lobby, I'm getting about 24 frames per second. This is technically playable, but no, this is not something you would want to subject yourself to for very long. I started up a whole new campaign just so I could show you this intro level. There's no way the graphics could sustain, or this frame rate will sustain once you get into some enemy encounters. Um, yeah, we're definitely pushing this tablet a little too hard here. I do just want to point out though that a little ARM SoC Windows on ARM solution, nothing fancy or properly optimized for this hardware, is technically able to launch one of the most graphically demanding games of a couple years back. So again, this is still bad at gaming, but I keep walking away from this tablet more and more impressed at what it is actually capable of doing. But we're not going to keep looking at potato quality control. Let me put a pin in this, and we'll show you some of the other issues with games that are also a little beefier. This is the one I really wanted to show you all. This is BioShock Remastered. This game is not super beefy. Like, running this game is actually pretty easy for a lot of mid-spec computers. But one of the issues, and this hasn't cropped up very often, this is the game that has showcased this issue the worst, where the Adreno GPU, the Qualcomm GPU that's stapled into this SoC, isn't always properly recognized by a number of games out there. It's the same problem that we have with DaVinci Resolve. When you fire up DaVinci Resolve, it loads like everything works perfectly, but it can't find the right GPU. BioShock Remastered is kind of doing the same thing. I'm actually at medium graphics settings here, and it's still kind of hanging 24, 25 frames per second, but the lighting effects and the water effects are all freaking out. So the game is playable in terms of sort of overall frame rate, but it is, you would never be able to last with all of the broken particle effects, lighting effects, water effects. All of that just looks awful. This is one of the few concerns someone might have, depending on the kind of games that you like to play, if the GPU is just completely not supported by the game in any way, where even the tablet can't sort of force some kind of compatibility with that game, then you're going to get these kinds of broken artifacts. Out of all of the games that I've demoed on this tablet, though, this is the absolute worst example I can find of this type of lack of GPU support, which is pretty much about where we can wrap this up. So other games that I tried, Spyro Reignited, just not very good graphics control settings in Spyro's kind of limits your ability to turn down some of the resolution, so that plays really choppy. Similarly, Tomb Raider and Hellblade and Wolfenstein. These are all games that will generally launch, but you really can't get the graphics settings down low enough where you can balance gameplay against the visuals. You can technically play them, and technically correct is the best kind of correct, but it's not really something that you'd really want to do. Alien Isolation is kind of a funny one. You can sort of balance it out. I'm putting it on the list of games that really didn't do it for me, but again, if you're playing at a lower frame rate, you're a little bit more patient with your gameplay style, you could maybe get away with a game like Alien Isolation. That shouldn't be too surprising because there's an amazing port of Alien Isolation for Android phones. This is the proper PC version of it running on this right here. So I keep hearing these commentaries like, oh, well, the Surface Pro 9, it's not powerful enough, and you can get a more powerful Surface. You can get a Core i5 or a Core i7. Look at the Geekbench scores! But then I don't see a lot of follow through showing you what you really can do with it. For my personal use, if I want a 5G connected tablet that works exceedingly like a proper computer and not like a dumbed down consumer tablet, I've got a 5G radio, and there is an argument to be made where you can fire up something like xCloud and play remotely over a data connection. Everything works great there. Obviously, a Microsoft product with a Microsoft streaming service, that's kind of peanut butter jelly time. When we throw out those criticisms like a Core i7 is going to have a higher Geekbench score, or even a Core i5 can outperform this thing, it's not really that cut and dry. The GPU in my Core i5 Surface laptop handles some of these games a little bit better for better GPU support. The iGPU in an Intel chipset is really well recognized by a number of games. But when it comes to a lot of these titles, the indie games and the shooters and the arcadey titles, this tablet plays most of those games better than my Intel-powered laptop. It's never as simple as a synthetic benchmark. You really do want to try and check what games you personally like to play and then see if the hardware can really meet those needs. For my tastes personally, especially when I can revisit some older games like Halo Spartan Assault, really fun arcadey twin stick shooter that I have not played since the days of Windows phones, and wouldn't you know it, with nothing fancy, not having to adjust any settings, playing this at the quality that it should be played at, this tablet crushes this game. So now, if you'll pardon, I'm gonna start from the beginning because I have not played this game in a really long time, and I'm probably proper bad at it. Like, yeah, I should not have been missing that from the get-go. I loved this shooter though. Twin stick, man, arcade, this is my jam. I can roll these all day long. So folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks so much for watching, for sharing, subscribing, all that action, especially those of you folks who are inclined to smash bell icons on your way down to the comments where if you'd like to ask some questions, like Windows on ARM is pretty fresh. If there's anything else that you'd like to try or you'd like to see, I'd definitely be down to showcase some of the other things that this tablet can do. The request hotline is open, so definitely call in. All the support lately has been absolutely fantastic. Those of you who are sharing videos, who are supporting, going to SomeGadgetGuy.com, maybe buying some merch, or if you're joining the list of names scrolling by on your screen from my Patreon, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy. This list is the coolest collection of tech pals in the universe, so I hope you check them out. Now, you know where you can find me around the rest of the internet, at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters and the Twitch, not so much on the Facebooks or the Instagrams, and I will catch you all on the next video. Whee!